Hello, Internet. Apologies for being a smid late. The cats were having a moment. Hello, friends. So, thank you for being here. Today, we've got another tarot deck walkthrough, and this tarot deck is the Tarot de los Muertos, otherwise known as the Tarot of the Dead. And I am really excited because I sold this to one of my absolutely lovely tarot students, and I can't wait for this person to have this deck in their hands and get to work with it. So I really wanted to make sure that we get this on the YouTubes for anyone who is curious about grabbing a copy of this deck for themselves, which is why I really love these walkthroughs, because online it can be a little bit challenging to find the entire deck to see if we do really resonate with the artwork, or if it is something where there's just like the cards that are available online are the ones that we like, and then it's kind of like, oh, we don't like the rest. So, all right, here we go. So I don't have the box for this anymore. So the person who bought this is going to get it in this cute little baggie. Love that. And it comes with this little book. So let's take a look at this little booklet really quick. And then the other side, we see it in English by Monica Knighton. And let's see. So it looks like, yeah, so the booklet is in both English and Spanish. So if you are someone who perhaps, if you're on this channel, I'm assuming that you speak English, and if you maybe want to learn Spanish, this would be probably a really fun way to do that, to translate tarot knowledge from one language to the other. So it looks like it's pretty much exactly half is in each language. So let's see what the booklet says. So it looks like this is the first printing from 2004 by Llewellyn. And so it starts out with a few little quotes. The first quote is by Don Marquis, and it says, "Skeleton, rattle your moldy leg. All men's lovers come to this." And then there's another quote by Dave Matthews, and it says, "Everything good needs replacing." So I'm going to read a little bit of this little booklet just to give us an introduction to what this deck is about and what the intention of it is. Like, I think on one hand it is a little bit self-explanatory, but on the other hand, I do think it is really fun to hear from the creator of a deck and just hear what their intention was. So it looks like this little introduction was written by the deck creator, Monica Knighton, in 2003. It's like, God, more than 20 years ago. It's kind of crazy to think about. So it says, at the beginning of November, Mexico celebrates Day of the Dead, or Dia de los Muertos. While the specific dates and observances may vary depending on region, the core of the holiday is the same: to honor family and friends who have died. Cemeteries and homes are decorated with flowers, and offering tables are laid out with gifts of food, clothing, and anything the loved one enjoyed in life. Some believe this is a time set aside for remembrance, while others believe that the dead literally return in spirit for a visit, communing with the family and enjoying the essence of the offerings left for them. Compare this with American culture today. Mortality is simply not something we want to talk about or accept. It implies a loss of control. Our ideas about where our dead family and friends fit into our psychological landscapes are splintered and vague. We are emphatic that we accept that they are gone. We are not open to loud public displays of grief. It is considered private, even like a disease. So I'm going to skip a little bit of this. Let's see. So I'm going to skip a little bit and then back to what she says about the tarot deck. So she says, so here is the Tarot of the Dead, inspired by Dia de los Muertos. I've read tarot booklets that say that the death card is change and transition. Don't panic, this card is only figurative, but hey, look, these are skeletons, human remains. I make no pretense that I'm implying anything other than human mortality. Yours, mine, it's okay. We're all born knowing it. It's a survival instinct. You probably wouldn't be reading this if you didn't understand the value of gallows humor. Okay, so she talks a little bit more about the dead and how we can't avoid death. So I'll read the last little bit. So she says, our humanity survives in our willingness to communicate. If we can talk about death, then maybe we can be better equipped to be there for the living in times of grief and loss. So not the longest little introduction, just kind of brief. And whoever is here live, feel free to request a few cards that you want to see. How does she interpret that? Because there is a very tiny little bit from each card in this little booklet for people who might need that or just might be wanting to see like how does she interpret each card, because everyone really does have kind of their different thought on that. So let's start with the walkthrough. So here is, oh, actually, the deck also comes with some spreads. I forgot to say that. So this pyramid spread. And on the back, we see what this is supposed to be. Personally, I don't love spreads like this, even though they are really common in the tarot universe. Any spread that has a card for outcome, personally, is not my favorite because the outcome, to me, that is up in the air most of the time. Like, it depends. What do we do in this moment? How do we behave in this moment? What choices can we make in this moment? What are we going to do? And the outcome, in my mind, changes depending on what actions we take. Right? So we have 6 and 7 positions as possible courses of action. And it's like, if those are for 2 different options, then isn't the outcome going to be a bit different depending on which course of action we take? So that is a mistake in my mind that I feel like many readers will make. But my view on this is a little bit unpopular. So we've got the same thing in Spanish. So it's cool. So, all right, the back of the cards look like this. Like this kind of interesting watercolory vibe. So let's begin with the major arcana. The Fool. Love seeing similar themes that we will recall from the Rider-Waite-Smith Fool. The bag on the back, the dog, the idea of movement, starting off on a new journey. I think that's really cool. All right, next up, we've got the Magician. And you'll see, and we'll get into this as this walkthrough moves along, but you'll see one of each of the suits depicted here, as is pretty typical with Magician cards. And we'll get to that as we go through the different suits. Next up, we've got High Priestess. Pretty interesting. The moon imagery. So it is, as is common with most decks created after the Rider-Waite-Smith, at least the decks that are not taking on the kind of Thoth incarnation or the Marseille type of incarnation, we do see some visual references to that traditional Rider-Waite-Smith. The Empress. And whoever is here live, feel free to let me know where you're viewing from and if you have any favorite cards that you are excited to see. The Emperor, definitely a departure from the Rider-Waite-Smith, but we can see similar vibes. Back when computers looked like this. Oh my God. Is anyone else old enough to remember that? Pretty interesting take on the Emperor. Very CEO energy. Hierophant. Instead of the little students, we've got the flamingos. Interesting imagery there. I'm actually really curious how this creator sums up her meaning of the Hierophant, especially given what imagery she's chosen. So let's see about the Hierophant. So she writes, presides over the established conventions of society, recognized public or private institutions, chivalry, conscience, social value system, reversed, dogma or propaganda, snobbery or prejudice in all forms, cliques. Very interesting. This character is clearly very quirky in her iteration. All right, next up. We've got The Lovers, and notice that the title is in English and Spanish. Definitely a different take on The Lovers, though we do see some familiar references. Next up, The Chariot. Again, very similar layout to the Rider-Waite-Smith, some similar themes. The Rider-Waite-Smith Chariot has two sphinxes. One is black and one white. And here we just see the bones. The Hermit. I loved this. Pretty similar to the Rider-Waite-Smith, but we got some fireflies. Next up, the Wheel of Fortune. I like that. The bicycle. Justice. And instead of the Sword of Justice, we've got the Gun of Justice. Very interesting take. And in some regions, that's, I guess, the more contemporary version of like what a weapon would be. Strength. We've got someone doing a fire-blowing, fire-eating performance. Not really sure. And I love all the roses there. Next up, we've got the Hanged Man. Noose in the background. It's interesting. So this is interesting. So this is the death card, but it actually doesn't say death. And this is the only card in this deck with actual, like, alive person being depicted. So that's pretty interesting. So let's read in the little booklet what she had to say about this. And I'm just going to scooch my computer closer because I keep leaning forward. And it's not the most comfortable for my back. So let's see what she says about that. I think that's kind of an interesting choice. Okay, this is interesting. So 13 bears no name in this deck and often called death. It signifies a powerful but natural change. Marks the beginning of self-awareness. To live, one must accept that one dies. Inverted, panic, stagnation, paralysis, anxiety, dissolution, and chaos. So I find this super interesting in a deck full of skeletons. The Tarot of the Dead, specifically the death card, is a pregnant lady. Death and rebirth. I think that's really cool. So we could actually think of this card in this deck not as the death card, but as the birth card. So I love that, like, very smart, kind of intentional creativity and play here in this deck. I think that's, like, really fun. Temperance. The Devil. The Tower. I love the Tower as a card in general. Very similar to the Rider-Waite-Smith imagery that we're all familiar with. The Star. Wow, this is beautiful. Again, similar to the Star card that we're all familiar with. The Moon. I love this. Again, similar to the Moon card in the Rider-Waite-Smith. And we see the only alive thing is the little lobster. So I find that interesting. And I'm sure we could read very deeply into that the only, at least so far, the only two, like, alive creatures are the pregnant lady and the lobster. the sun. And it's interesting because this is more similar to the Marseille style of sun than it is to the Rider-Waite-Smith style of sun. So I actually have the sun, something based on the sun on my hand. So the sun in the Marseille has like 2 figures. All right, next up. Judgment. Very similar to the Rider-Waite-Smith. And the world also similar to the Rider-Waite-Smith. I love that dancing skeleton with the violin. Okay. So next up we have got, the deck does look pretty Marseille-like in the rest of the minors, as you can see. So I guess we'll consult the guidebook to see what does it say in terms of what suit is supposed to be associated with what. I don't want to make any assumptions without taking a look, but let's see what these suits are. So we've got the pens, and then let's see what else do we have. We've got the reels, which is like a film, old school film reel. I'll show you guys that, which is yellow. So I'm curious if the reels are going to end up being pentacles. And again, this is a Marseille style because we don't see any activities depicted. Then we've got coffins as a suit, which is green. And then we've got pistols, guns as a suit. So based on how she's doing the interpretations in the booklet, we'll be able to figure out how she is aligning each of these. Like I could see the logic to kind of set these up in a few different ways. So I just want to see, well, what is her intention with this? Okay, so she is putting the wands as the suit of pens. So that for her is fire. Okay, so, and it's interesting because she's putting that first, and then cups, and then air, and then earth. It's a bit of a random order. So let's just see. So for her, she is writing that the suit of pens, she's associating this with the suit of wands. And I do love seeing deck creators be really creative and do their own takes on different suits. Like I do think that is completely legit, and I always am interested to hear like what is your explanation for that. So she's written the suit of the fire suit is wands/pens, represents the fire of creativity, of putting thought into action. The old saying that the pen is mightier than the sword may well be true. The wildfire of creative force often cannot be contained by reason or will. This is a suit of freedom, of active change, and of seized opportunity. Just like a writer brainstorming, we must act in the now, feverishly scribbling down our stories, ideas, and dreams as they race through the mind. Otherwise, they fly away. The secret is in the immediate doing with no present thought for the how or why. So I don't think we need to go into all the meanings, but I will show you guys, just a walkthrough to make the walkthrough complete. Ace of Pens, Two of Pens, Three of Pens. And I do find Marseille's styles of decks, like they really are going to test your tarot knowledge. How well do you really know all of the cards? And then we've got the page of pens. And so here we do see the sunflower imagery that we do see in the Queen of Wands. So this would be page of wands, technically. Page of pens, the sunflowers. So I do like that they've kept that Rider-Waite-Smith sunflower and wands association. Knight of pens, aka Knight of Wands. I love the Knight of Wands as a card. Just like solid vibes. Queen of Pens, aka Queen of Wands. King of Pens, aka King of Wands. And I wish there was a sunflower in the Queen of Wands, but I'm glad at least it's here. All right, so we got that. And so let's see what next suit is. So, okay, this is kind of how I thought it would go. So the suit of coffins, she is associating with the suit of cups. So she writes, represents the emotions, the unconscious, the psyche, and the intangible part of us that we cannot live without. This suit is always represented as a vessel, whether a cup or a vase that can hold the soul, stuff represented by water. As a vessel, the coffin is not solely a receptacle for the body, nor is a funeral a ceremony solely for the dead. A funeral is as much for the living to have closure and to express their emotions and to grieve. The coffin as a receptacle for the body speaks also of the body as a receptacle for the soul. This is interesting. So let's just go through this. I think it is an interesting take on this. I wish it was blue and not green, but that's just me. And again, just a kind of Marseille style. So yeah, the Marseille style is really gonna test your tarot skills because there's not a lot to go off of when it comes to the imagery in decks that do a kind of Marseille style for the minors. So this is gonna be the Page of Cups, Page of Coffins. The Knight of Coffins, aka Knight of Cups. Queen of Coffins, aka Queen of Cups. And finally, the King of Coffins, aka King of Cups. I love like creative takes on the tarot. I think it's always really fun. So let's see, what is the next suit? So let's see, what did she put? All right, the next suit she has is the swords / pistols, which is interesting. And so she writes, it represents the intellect, the airy world of pure thought and reason, previously represented by swords, a symbol associated with justice. It chiefly reflected our ability to divide with a double-edged blade, right from wrong, light from dark, and above from below. The pistol, or gun, as a symbol of thought, does not assume that all our decisions are as simple as black and white. As a symbol of thought, the pistol emphasizes examining all shades of gray lying between the two edges of the blade before letting your bullet cut through the air. So let's go through this suit really quickly. Ace of Pistols, aka Ace of Swords. And the moon imagery here in the background is always interesting. We love the moon. Now we've got the Page of Pistols, otherwise known as the Page of Swords. The Knight of Swords, aka Knight of Pistols in this deck. Queen of Pistols, otherwise known as the Queen of Swords. And then the King of Pistols, otherwise known as the King of Swords. All right. So the last suit in this deck, obviously, is going to be the Pentacles, and then she is called this the suit of reels, film reels, which I think is kind of interesting. So let's see why she has chosen to make that association. Okay, coins/reels, the Earth suit. Let's see what she says. So she says, represents the Earth, the material suit, or the world around us. This suit deals with the world we work, eat, sleep, live, and generally live in, but this cannot literally be the physical world around us. Each of us lives in a reality built for us by our experiences and what our senses report to us. Just as our perception of the world is translated to us through our mind and senses, film reflects a composite perception of the material world. Jung has equated the act of watching a film to dreaming. And like dreaming, film can use figurative symbols to communicate. We could call movies shared dreams. As an art form, our basic need to communicate our perception of the world has evolved from pictures to the oral tradition of storytelling, to the written word, to the film, the shared dream. So let's just zoom through these. Of course, Ace of Reels. Two of Reels. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then, of course, we've got the Page of Reels, aka the Page of Pentacles. The Knight of Reels, aka the Knight of Pentacles. And we've got the Queen and the King. The Queen and the King of Pentacles. So I feel kind of bad as I'm giving this deck to this person shuffled rather than perfect like it just was. But I just wanted to give you guys some extra thoughts on the size. So personally, to me, this is like the perfect size of deck for my hands. I think the card stock is perfect. The cards are like the perfect thickness. They're glossy enough that they slide really nicely as you're shuffling. So as a reader, that is something I tend to pay attention to. Like if a deck's paper stock is too thin, it makes shuffling a little bit more challenging. They are on the like moderately thick side of things, which personally I really like as a reader. I don't want a card to be too flimsy. I love this deck size. It fits really nicely in my hand. Personally, it doesn't feel too big. It doesn't feel too small. To me, this is like the perfectly produced style of deck when it comes to size, paper stock, printing, like all of that stuff. Like I love a deck that feels like this feels. And for anyone looking for a reading today, Queen of Swords is what came up. There we go. Yeah, I feel like the feel in my hands is really nice with this deck. Shuffle is like pretty much perfect. So I don't have any critique in terms of how does this deck like feel in my hands. I feel like it feels actually really nice. Perfect, really. So yeah, here we go. That's my walkthrough, my thoughts on the deck itself. I like that there is a book in 2 different languages. I like that it does give a little bit of information on, like, why did she decide to rename the suits? What is the symbolism that she's gonna be working with that? As folks read with this deck, what I would say is if you're gonna read with this, like, I wouldn't just like, whenever we're reading with a deck, we do it for good reason, right? So it shouldn't be like we're reading the exact same card the same way every single time that we're working with a new deck. We're working with a specific deck for a specific reason, and that deck is going to have its own inflection on what does that mean. So since card 13 in this deck is the pregnant lady, and the death card and the moon card are the only ones with living creatures in it, that is something I would take into account if you're reading with this deck, right? It's not going to be something that you're going to interpret the exact same way as you would if you were reading with a Rider-Waite-Smith deck, in my opinion. Whenever we're reading with a particular deck, we should be doing so for good reason, and we should be taking that deck's personality into account as we're reading with it, and whether that's for ourselves or someone else, in my opinion. Okay, y'all, that's it for now. I'm going to be doing another walkthrough with a different deck in about 60 seconds. So thank you so much for listening to this walkthrough of, let me just get that out of the way, Tarot of the Dead. I cannot wait to ship this out to the lovely person who ordered it. So hope you guys enjoyed the walkthrough. Let me know what you think of this deck in the comments, especially that interesting switcheroo around the death card being actually a woman who is pregnant and having the moon's lobster be the only other alive non-skeletal creature in this entire deck. A lot of interesting things we could say about that. Very interesting symbolism. And I'll catch you guys in the next video where I will be doing a walkthrough of the Light Gray Art Lab communal tarot deck from like a bazillion years ago. All right, y'all. Talk to you soon. Bye.